Hello and welcome to the MHG podcast. Once again, I'm Bradley and I've gone straight into it. I'm joined by Stu. The reason I've gone straight into it this week, there's a lot to unpack. And something I want us to start doing is whenever we start, we seem to have gone into this thing where we go, how you doing? And like we go, yeah, all good. Or, you know, things are going fairly well. We're going to start being a bit more honest. So, listen, I'm not great this week. Loads of crap's gone on, and I'll tell you about some of it at the end. There is trigger warnings, and our content warnings will give you that when it's going. But Stu, how are you?
Yeah, I mean, not brilliant at the moment. So, you know, there's a lot of stresses going on, and it's really difficult when you've got them going on. You know that there's loads of other things that make you happy, because this isn't depression. It's you know, there are bad things happening, and that's not to minimise depression. It's just that they're distinct from one another.
Yeah.
So it's I'm not depressed because one of the main things that characterises not being depressed is I still enjoy and look forward and can't wait for things like playing games and going out at the weekend. Going out into the country and stuff. So I've got all these things to look forward to, but the blocker is pretty much capitalism. It's like typically it's like the ideal thing for me to do now would be, do the podcast, which I enjoy, and then go out and have fun for a bit, go for a walk, get some fresh air, buy a coffee, sit in the park, all that sort of stuff. Come back, edit the podcast, then watch some TV. None of those things I'm able to do because of capitalism until, my shift is over. And, I'm not depressed, but there are a lot of stresses. Work is one, not that work is particularly bad, but it's just very full on at the moment, and with all the things in my personal life going on, it's making it a bit of a challenge. And it's one of those I want to be on a Hawaiian island kind of days.
Oh, I don't know about Hawaii. There's too many people around.
Oh, there is that.
Where's the Tom Hanks one? That island will do.
Yeah, somewhere in the Pacific. That was a good one. Yeah.
I'll get rid of the volleyball. I don't even want a volleyball, just on my own. But yeah, we'll talk about the personal stuff other times. It's but yeah, I did notice I was listening back to a few intros, and I noticed we were starting to get into that habit that people do, where someone asks how you are, you just go, yeah, I'm all right. When even like we'd been speaking beforehand, other times we realised actually we're not both okay. But the idea of this podcast is to bring joy, and we're still going to do that. But we'll try and be more honest about where we are that week as well, because, listen, we're not always great. Although, when you was talking, just to bring a bit of lightheartedness to it before we segue, I'm trying to work out a segue here, but we'll get there, you said about sort of going to the park and that, and there was just a random conversation I had with Lo the other day, where she's got this thing where if I ever look like sad, or she jokes that I look sad, or because usually I'm deep in thought, or my mind's just gone somewhere, she goes, "Oh, have someone been bullying you in the playground when you gone to pick Edith up?" And she done that, and she went, "Have you been out?" And she said, "Someone bullying you in the playground again?" My answer, this is where I don't stop to think. I went, "Why on earth would I be in a playground? There's no kids." I didn't mean it like that.
I know. I'm going to be very literal on this answer. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
I went, wait. What I meant was, I'm not taking Edith to school. Why would I be in a playground? Why would I be in a playground? There's no kids about. Yeah. And it's like privacy in their own home. But I just went, I didn't mean it like that.
Yeah. No, we know that there's nothing dodgy on that side. Absolutely.
No, I know. It's just, again, it's all the signs are there of like the ADHD and stuff. The lack of filter I've always had.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I really like that. I mean, generally in life, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. But I say it's the one time it got me in trouble at school when I turned around and told the teacher to fuck off because he didn't know what he was talking about art. It's when I tried to sort of like get my bullies back at their own game and I got into trouble, and I just don't understand. Again, I still say what would be considered inappropriate things, not to other people, but generally like in conversations with Lo. but a louder voice because we're outside, and I think I need to speak louder, and it's not appropriate for where we are or who's around. So, yeah, there's always that. Talking of not being appropriate.
Yeah, go on.
EA, they're not very appropriate. Nor Ubisoft.
They are not.
Video games are not very appropriate at times. And one of them that's coming out is going to be part of a little bit of discussion. Oh, he's coming out, has come out. But anyway, video games, Stu. Jesus Christ, that was the worst segue I've done.
It was started so promisingly. I thought you really were going to. I was sold. Yeah. And then, no, I was sold down the river, mate.
You was on a journey. We was on a story. And it's no payoff whatsoever.
No, my pockets are empty.
So, I'm going to start this week because I've got 2, you've got 1, and it's going to be easier. So, because it's balanced, otherwise I talk for too long, and we don't want that. So, listen, first half of this podcast is going to be, we're going to talk about some games, have a bit of fun, and then it gets serious, but we will tell you before that happens. But anyway, first off, I've been playing Wanted Dead, which everyone seemed really excited about. I've seen lots of online on forums and stuff like that. Everyone going, can't wait for this game. It looks fantastic. It looks like proper cheesy fantastic. So I was like, I'll give this a go. You know, I actually like, if everyone's getting really excited, I like good B tier games and stuff like that. So if it's a bit EDF-y or a bit binary domain or something like that, give it to me. Yes, stick that into my veins. From the makers of Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive as well, or some of them anyway. And it's, you know, it's a slasher stroke shootery type game, set in a future world. You run a zombie unit or some gubbins or whatever it is. And there's a major conspiracy and whatever, you know. It's I just stories gubbins. And I lost interest in the story very early because the acting is like beyond wooden. The story is nonsensical. The characters sound like they recorded different scripts at different times in different parts of the world. You know, maybe one of them done them back in 1990, the other one done it recently. It's all over the place. It just doesn't work. The gameplay is bad. So the melee stuff and the shooty stuff, it's just not odds with each other. It's as though they don't want to be in the same game, but they've been forced to have to. And it just doesn't work. The gameplay does not work in any way, shape or form together at all. And you can't concentrate on just one because you need the other one to help with the other. Like, you need the shooting to help do stuff for the melee. So you can't rely on just one over the other. So you have to do all these bits. And it's got loads of like finishing move type things that rely on both and all that kind of thing. The visuals in the game are dark and dank for the most part, even though they do have splashes of light. It doesn't guide you enough for the sort of game it is. So you end up just like in these arena-y style levels going, there's something somewhere I need to kill. Don't know where it is. Oh, right, there it is. It's attacking me from there, so I will do that. It's very hard to differentiate, like, because you've got a squad with you. Very hard to differentiate who's in your squad and who's enemy at a glance. So you have to spend time working that out. It's got a cyberpunkery feel to it, which is, to be fair, it looks nice. I will give it the thing. Like, visually, it looks nice. It just like the backdrops and everything. It works, and yeah, it's like they claim it as a love letter to the 6th generation of consoles. Like the thing is with a love letter to that era. Is that, yes, it's a love letter, but then you have to, like, move on from that, and you take influences, and then you build your own thing. And, yeah, everything about this game is bad. Do you want the however, though?
Go on, however.
I played it, and I couldn't stop playing it. When I played it, when I, like, wanted to play it, and wanted to start it, was like, oh... I've got to force myself to actually play a bit of this. But once I was in, I couldn't put it down. And it's just, I don't know why. I don't like it, but I couldn't stop playing it.
That doesn't make any sense.
No. It's got something, but I just honestly cannot tell you what that something is. Because I can't pick up anything about this game and go, yeah, this is really good, this part, and this works. Because everything about it is fundamentally not good. But I couldn't help but when I played it, play it. Perfect Game Pass game is what I would say. 50 quid? Not a chance.
No. God, no. It looked like a B game from the beginning, you know? It looked like a second-tier game.
Which is fine.
Yeah. But that determines the price in my book. And, you know, I mean, you know, I always kind of... I love these kinds of third-person action games and tend to buy pretty much all of them. But, you know, a lot of them I'll just go, I'll buy it later when it's cheap. And I did that with, like, Killer is Dead.
Yeah.
And Lollipop Chainsaw and Mad World.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of those that are kind of like this. And No More Heroes. I actually bought that fairly near the time. But the thing is... Some of those had things that you like to pick out of them that were good.
Yeah.
And it was enough
Lollipop
to play
Chainsaw is a perfect example. I think like the story in that and the acting and the actual melee combat were brilliant. The other stuff that surrounded that was pretty bad.
Yeah, the level design wasn't great. I wasn't a big fan of the combat either. I didn't think it ever quite gelled, but I mean, that's personal taste. But yeah, no, you're right. It had enough in it to be worthy of a pickup, just not a full price pickup. And a lot of those are the same. I would say No More Heroes is the one that deserves its full price. You know, it's very, very clever and actually busting that genre a little bit. But I mean, after you've done that, it's very difficult to go back.
Yeah.
And go, oh, we're doing something in this style, and then come to the table with pretty much nothing new and inspired.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it was new and inspired in 2008. You know, if you're coming back and not doing anything with it that's new after that, you know, might as well not bother.
Yeah. I think Vanquish sets the level as to what that era of action game should be. That's your base level, I think, now. If you're making an homage to that era, that's your base level.
Yes, and I think you can do a lot with it. Yeah. You know, I think they tried. There was big reaches with both that and Binary Domain. You know, and they were reaches that worked. You know, they got their goal, and it sounds like this one just hasn't quite got it.
No, but again, it doesn't at all. But it does. As I said, 60 quid. I mean, maybe it's because I got it for nothing that I was like, I'm just playing it. I would have been angry at 60 quid popped down on this, 50 quid or whatever it was. Sorry, let me just double check. £50, sorry, it's $60. 50 quid popped down on this. Game Pass, not a problem whatsoever. I think you'll get so much fun, and it could become a cult classic on something like Game Pass. This would have flopped hard in that generation, that 6th generation of consoles. This would have flopped hard straight away through word of mouth. Because it's not worth the money at all, and this would have been a tenner in Game Station just 3 weeks later, I reckon.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
But if you can't get to it for free, play it. It's worth giving a look.
Right, fair play. Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll segue straight into mine because it's very different, but in a way kind of similar. And it's the demo of System Shock, and it's like on the surface, like there's very little. It's got connective tissue between those two games. But what you're talking about is a game from another era that's been done in this era in a different way because it's a remake rather than, an homage. But, there are similarities about what you're talking about, what you're trying to grasp. You know what I mean? And, to baseline it, I think like System Shock is one of those games that has had more influence on games than you can possibly imagine. If you're really into games, you kind of know, but unless you are, it's not the sort of thing that you would be like, oh yeah, the influence for this is System Shock. You'd say, oh, it's Half-Life 2 or Half-Life, or it's Quake, or it's this or it's that. But very few people would say System Shock. But that integration of and like I didn't know this because I didn't play it back in the day because I came to PC gaming a few years after this. PC gaming started for me in about 2011, 2012. So it kind of missed the boat on this one. And what they've done is they've tried to make it as faithful to the old game as possible, I believe, whilst adding some quality of life improvements. And someone who's coming into it as never having played the original, my feeling is that they don't make enough quality of life improvements. And it makes me feel like they're probably damned if they do and damned if they don't. And it makes me feel their audience is probably the people who bought it originally or wished they'd bought it originally. So and I'm not criticising the game. I think the game is good. It's just not for me. And the reason for this is because the quality of life stuff that it's missing are things like pacing and, like I was talking about with Dead Space, not introducing quality of life stuff that is really kind of fundamental. So the map isn't good. There's very few visual indicators of where you're supposed to be going. You're supposed to collect loads of stuff and then find and sort what's useful, but unlike every action RPG since then, there's no kind of like highlight around things to say whether they're important or not. There's no stratification of them when you pick them up. You have to look at every item. The menus are really clunky and difficult to manage and navigate. There's clipping through enemies when they're dead. The combat has no feedback whatsoever. There are lots and lots and lots of things that just scream whatever year it was released. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was 2006 or 7 or something.
Oh well, I was going to say 90 something, but so yeah,
it could be even older. Yeah, I'm not even sure. So yeah, it's not. It doesn't even seem like a remake in spirit where they've advanced things so that you're playing a game and you go, oh yeah, this is exactly what the old game was like, and then you play the old game and oh no, actually they've improved it loads. It seems to me, as somebody who's coming fresh to it, that it's still got too much legacy stuff, and in a way that I've not heard from people playing Dead Space for the first time. I think people have gone, there's a couple of things that maybe feel like old-fashioned gaming, but most of it feels fresh and interesting and new to me, kind of a thing. Whether that means they've missed the mark or whether they've hit their mark and that mark is just a much smaller target and a much smaller demographic, I don't know well enough to know. And as I say, fundamentally, I think it's probably a good game from what I've played in the demo, but I would change things radically to make it a game that I would enjoy, I think.
Yeah, it's also I find System Shock. I still can't ever get my head around that System Shock is the same series as like the BioShock games and stuff like that. I've never been able to get my head around that. Yeah, because they feel so different. And I did play System Shock back in the day. Back in the 70s, I think I played it. I think I played it as a board game in 1957, something like that. Anyway,
my God, I've just looked it up. 1994. Yeah. So I was 10 years out or more.
Oh, so I was right.
That's incredible.
I was close when I said 96-ish.
Yeah, gee, I had no idea it was that old.
Okay, there we go. Could we repeat that again? Brad was right. Bloody hell.
I know, right?
I know, but yeah, I played it years ago. And I say I enjoyed it, and I've got it on my Steam account. I've got like 3 different versions of it. And I don't know what they all are. So I've tried playing it again anyway, and I struggled to play it again. So I don't think it's one that's aged greatly in terms, not in terms of content or anything like that, but just in the way it plays. It definitely needs work in a remaster. And it is a bit of a shame to hear that it's maybe not quite up there at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not the person to ask. I mean, I've just been going off as if it is, but I could be completely wrong. But it's a tricky thing to do, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you've got the likes of Dead Space, which seems to be very, very faithful to the original, but has good quality of life improvements. And another success, Resident Evil 2 remake, which is completely different because it's changed perspective, but keeps the spirit of the game. So you can play it as a spiritual remake, or you can play the original and get a different experience, which is a weird thing to keep in your mind. Or you can do this, which to me seems like it's a complete homage / remaster of the original with just a touch of quality of life improvements. But yeah, I don't know it well. I don't know the original well enough, so I can't really say. But I would say it might. It, like me, people might be a little bit off-put by it being so dated, because I've played BioShock, I've played all of its antecedents, and they have all the kind of stuff in there that you really kind of want from this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's so I'm with you there, and I think what a lot of remasters and remakes get wrong, and I think Grand Theft Auto 3 Trilogy Remaster, Definitive, whatever they called it, made the mistake, is you're remastering the wrong parts. Graphics aren't an issue for me. If you can tart them up, great. When we want remasters of older games, like Grand Theft Auto 3 is brilliant, but it's like the aiming has moved on since then. So fix the aiming. That's what you need to do in that game. When you're looking at like maybe old 3D platformers, give us camera control and analog movement. Let's fix that. That's what a remaster is of those games. You keep the visuals as they are, because like there's a like if you look at the Spyro games, for example, there's a quirkiness to the blocky PS1 visuals. But I don't think it controls as well anymore. So what you do is you go in and you change the controls so they're more modern. There's you go back and play various other older games. You just go, this is really good, but the controls aren't that good anymore. Silent Hill is a great example where I don't think the controls quite work for a modern age. Yeah. So they went and decided to upgrade all the graphics. Don't do that, because that's what made the game. Upgrade the controls. And that's honestly where so much of the this is better in the past comes from. It's nothing to do with visuals, nothing to do with gameplay. It's the controls. And they all seem to miss that. And a lot of I'd like to see what is it? Aliens versus Predator? The first one that done the dual stick.
Oh yeah,
controls.
Alien Resurrection.
Was that what the first person shooter?
That was the first-person shooter on the PS1, yeah.
That had the very first dual analog movement, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Now, even that, I dare say, has aged not great, because that started the revolution, which then got refined. So I would like to see maybe that game redone with the controls updated to modern, because it would deserve it. Because it started the revolution, it deserves the ability to be part of the outcome of that revolution, because I think if you play that now, I think it will feel jilted and weird compared to what we've got. Modern driving, like old driving games, like remaster. If someone was to send me a Gran Turismo remaster, like a Gran Turismo, say 1 to 4 as a remastered package or something like that, and that still had the original press X to go and B or what else, or square to brake. That wouldn't work in a racing game, so you'd need to update those controls. And I think that's what they got to start considering for a lot of these older games is, can they add modern control systems to get them working?
Yeah, and I think it sounds like they've done it perfectly with Metroid Prime Remaster.
Yes.
So, that's a look.
Yeah, but they stole that from the old Prime Hacks community.
Well, I'm not surprised. No, I'm not surprised.
That work was already done for them. Yeah. Let's just say that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's a really, just going back to Alien Resurrection, there's a really good video on it. I can't remember if it was, I think it was Civvy11, who's a really good YouTuber, who did it. I'll find it out and I'll link it in the show notes or in Twitter about it. But I've played it.
Won't.
I will. I promise. I'll remember.
We never do.
I promise I will. I've played it within the last few years. Can't remember exactly how many, but within the last 5 years. And there's all sorts of problems with, because it was new, look sensitivity, dead zone, acceleration on the sticks, the button layouts, not being able to remap them properly. There's like all sorts of things that you're like, oh, it does twin stick, oh, it will be great, and then you're like, oh shit, no, this isn't how I remember twin stick.
Yeah.
which is a really good way of tying it into what we were talking about. So many quality of life improvements since then. So it was a pioneer, but I think you could get over the controls a little bit if it didn't have things like a terrible draw distance and bullet sponge enemies, because they made this fatal mistake of playing the game so much, because it was in development for so long, that they got so good at it, the developers, that they were like, oh, it's too easy, we'll have to up the difficulty. And then it became one of the most difficult games ever made. And so that fucks it up as well. Excuse my French. So yeah, it's going back to it. Totally hits on what you were saying about you've got to get the controls right, and you've got to get the feel of the game right, and you've got to pretend to your audience that that's exactly how the game felt back in the day.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I liken it to, obviously, the most important invention ever is the wheel. But imagine if someone made a car today and went, yeah, but to pay homage to the original wheel, we're making all the wheels out of stone. And not perfectly round, because obviously it was never perfectly round back then. It's it's gonna be sort of like representational of a wheel, shall we say? We wouldn't accept it. So pioneering is good. Keeping that pioneering state isn't always good. That might come back later.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, no, just very quickly before we finish on that one. The perfect old wheel analogy is World of Warcraft. Which I've never played, but I know that there was this huge clamour from the community to release the original game. They were all like, oh, it's been modded out of everything, out of existence. It's totally not the game that was originally released, blah, 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 blah. So they released the original, well, with a couple of patches along, nothing game breaking, where the first, I think it's like the first properly fixed and bug patched, version. And then everyone, yeah. And then everyone was like, no, this isn't the game. This isn't it. No, it's not fit. This is broken. It's like, this is literally the code we gave you back in whatever the date was.
You accepted it back then because you knew no different, and then we iterated on it.
Yeah. And everyone was like, yeah, this needs upgrades.
Do you reckon this is why they felt so confident in the mess that was Warcraft 3? Remaster? Just went, see, they don't know what they want, so we'll give them what they think they want. And that bit them in the ass, because sometimes if you've actually got a game out there that people are enjoying, you don't need to try and fix it.
I know. Listening to your audience can be one of the worst things that you can ever do, because your audience don't know what they want.
No, not all the time. No, they think they know what they want. They don't know what they want.
Correct.
So yeah, it's. I feel like we're going into talking about DMC now.
Well,
we won't.
Let's not. We'll do that next week.
Because we'll talk about that. Because again, if that was called something different, that would be a franchise now. But anyway, we will carry on. So moving on, I've been playing an amazing game that's out. It comes out in March fully, the end of March fully, and it's called Dredge.
Okay.
This game is a fishing game at its surface level. It's also an RPG adventure mystery game with a commerce management system to it, with a degree and RPG elements and stuff like that. But basically, the core concept is you end up in this world and you get given a fishing boat which you've got to pay off, Tom Nook styly. You get given this thing to do this thing, but hey, you've got to pay that off. However long it takes, you've got to pay it off. And then you go fishing. And that's the base of the game. You go out into this world and fish. Now, this world isn't just any old world. It's an Eldritch-inspired world. So the fish aren't just like guppies and like carp and stuff like that. No. It's Eldritch-inspired fish. And it goes places. So what you've kind of got is you go out, and what I like this. So the overall thing, I don't want to say too much because it goes places story, and this is a good story, not like Wanted Dead where it was gubbins. This is not even got guppies in it. That'll work. This is like it
Guppy
goes
gubbins.
places. Yeah, guppy gubbins. This goes places. It goes deep, and I'm not even that far into it yet because I want to wait for the full release because I've only got access to some of it so far because of the way they've given press. Anyway, whatever. And so you go out, and one of the mechanics is you do your fishing. You can upgrade your fishing lines and things and stuff like that to get bigger and better fish and go to different areas based on where you are and what sort of bait you need and all that kind of thing. And then you have to have an inventory with you. And it's a Resident Evil style inventory. So you've got slots in there and stuff. And you have to place, like, your fishing line might be, like, 4 blocks long. So you have to fit that in. Your fish you catch might be 5 blocks, but in an L shape. And then you have to fit those in. You might get 4 blocks. So you got the Tetris type thing going on. So you have to fit it in Tetris style to try and fit it all in. And if you're good with that, you can move that about as you see fit and stuff like that. So if you're good with that, you can really maximise your space. If you're not good with that, or you've got certain equipment that's the wrong type of shape, you might struggle to fit it all in and stuff like that. So you've got to go and fish, you fit it all into your inventory, and then you bring it back. But it's like your rod's got to be in there. Some of it's not your bait, but other bits that you need to carry have to be in there as well. So it's not just a case of I'll fit all the fish in there. There's other things you might find that you need to also put in there. So you have to really balance how many fish type things do you want to bring back, what equipment do you want to take, and how much room is it all going to take up, and all those kinds of things. You go back, you sell them, you upgrade, you pay off your boat, you move on to another part, kind of rinse and repeat, but it develops from there. And honestly, it is just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Not in a sort of like, oh, this is such a relaxing, carefree game, because it's not. It's Eldritch based, so there's nothing sort of like pleasant and carefree about it. But somehow it is as well. Is that, I suppose it's almost like, do you know that visceral kind of, like sometimes you play, I don't know, Doom, and shooting aliens in the face is so cathartic and it's like a welcome relief. Or you watch a horror film and it makes you feel good watching a horror film.
Oh, absolutely.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing going on. So it is dark, it is dank, but it's also got so much colour and life to it. It's stressful, but it's relaxing. And the further you go, like, the more the story develops, and it's got some really interesting story, and there's something lurking beneath the depths as well, and it hints towards that to start. And I just absolutely love this thing. It kind of came out of nowhere for me, and then I saw it and went, "Ooh, I like the sound of this." I thought it was roguelike, in all fairness, and that's all. It's not roguelike at all. It's like straight through. But it's so good, and like it's like little things. So you got to be out there on the timers. You don't just go out there and fish to the point where you fill things up and then you go back when you're done. There's a timer, so if you're caught out there at the wrong time, the seas become treacherous. But to get the better things, you need to go further out. So it takes you longer to get out there, longer to get back. So you've got to take that into consideration as well. But if you upgrade your boat well enough, you move faster, and you can get to like areas you previously couldn't. You can fish things you previously couldn't, and it's just like there's so much balance in there, but not in a like overworked kind of way. It all works and makes sense. And the first time I got attacked by something, I genuinely jumped. Like, not scared. I spoke about my thing with horror games. I don't get scared. But I genuinely jumped. I was like, Jesus Christ, what was that? What's it doing? I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
So it's got that effect. And it almost does the horror thing better than horror games do. Because horror games, I'd never go, right, it's going to try and scare me. That's what you know. So I don't get scared by a horror game. It's like, yeah, there's going to be a jump scare at some point. This came totally out the blue. And I went, whoa, Jesus Christ, I need to get out of here. I generally had some panic trying to, I don't want to lose my stuff, let's get back quickly. And it was, it's brilliant. Absolutely wonderful. And that's out at the end of March, and I implore anyone to go and get it. It is wonderful.
Wow, that does sound like a cracker. No, I'll definitely put it on the wish list, I think.
Don't know the price. Put it this way, if you've got 50 quid burning a hole in your pocket, get this over Wanted Dead.
Well, I think that's a good lesson for most people with every game. It's like, if you've got money, don't buy Wanted Dead, buy something else.
Yeah. If you've got 50 quid and this only costs a tenner, it's that good. Buy 5 copies and gift 4.
That's another good idea.
Yeah, it's honestly, it is so good. And again, I will maintain this as always. Where the AAA market's failing miserably, the indie devs are coming out. I mean, this is Team 17. Are Team 17 still indie?
I don't know.
Trindy? Are we going to start saying Trindy?
Trindy.
Triple indie?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So, yeah. Also, I want to coin a phrase. There's a game coming out, I can't remember what it's called, that is basically a Dead Cells homage. So I want to start coining the phrase for games that have got that action-adventure platforming, semi-roguelike with weapon choices as you go type thing going on. The Cells-like.
Why not, eh? Yeah, it's a good one.
We've got Souls-like, haven't we? So, Cells-like.
Nice, I
so
like
if
it.
that ever comes, that's mine.
There's a pun.
I'm having that.
Yeah.
Royalties and all. Yeah, Cells-like.
Totally.
But Dredge is a Cells-like. It's wonderful. Buy 5 copies of it and gift them. That's how good it is. That's my new. That could be our new review score. Buy this many copies and gift that many.
That's the standard. Yeah. Well, just
yeah.
So just very, very quickly, I'll try and be as fast as possible on the subject of game prices. Just to touch on the Wizard game again and that sort of ilk. It's just a reminder, really, and I've said this like on the forum that you and I use, but that's only got a smaller. It's got a bigger reach than us, but it's still only got a small reach. But I was going to say, when you're arguing and discussing the art versus artist thing, don't worry so much about that as worry about art versus commerce, which I've said online as well. So what I mean by that is, if the content of a game is neutral, like it doesn't cause anybody harm, so there's nothing in that game that causes harm to people in and of itself, which I think is accepted. It's that the person who receives money from it is the one that causes problems. Separate it, buy it secondhand so that the money is going to an individual and not to the corporation. And the only time I would say boycott a game in terms of playing it is if there are aspects of the game that are problematic, that are bigoted, that can generate hate. If the game doesn't do that, play the game, just don't remunerate the creator. Split those two things off. Indulge in the art, but split it from the commerce. And you have my permission to pirate the game to do that as well.
Yeah, if you absolutely must play it. I am slightly different on that. I would rather, personally, that no one was playing the game. I will never, however, police that. I still maintain if you play the game and you're not willing to give up the game, then I think someone else put it, can I trust you to support my community when the shit really hits the fan? Doesn't mean I think any less of you for playing it. I don't think any less of you for buying it. Because I've bought games and products that other people go, please don't, please don't, please don't. But it doesn't affect me as much. So, again, there is levels to all of this. But, yeah, you're right. If you're someone who really, really wants to play it, but you do feel moral... You feel you're being pulled in different directions because you've got good morals and stuff like that. Do you know what? Yeah, pirate it, buy it secondhand, whatever. To absolutely play it. Now, that being said, there are better options out there. There are better Wizard games out there that are in that world. And for anyone who's not sure about how problematic J.K. Rowling is and the series as a whole, the fact that the two of the 3 main cast members have completely distanced themselves from it speaks volumes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ginger one keeps wanting to say he'll go back, so I don't know where he is with that. But the other two, Radcliffe and Emma Watson, have both said, yeah, no, we're done. Yeah. We don't align ourselves with her whatsoever. So, but I can say ginger one because my daughter's ginger, just in case anyone wants to pick up on that.
Yeah, the milkman's child. No, I don't want to joke.
Yeah.
Yes. No. So I mean, yeah. I think that probably leads nicely into not a nice topic, but the one that we want to discuss next, isn't it?
Yes. Content warning. If you're not in the mood for this, and I understand why people aren't, and you just wanted to stick at the games, it's why we went with the games first, so it's easy for you to get out rather than potentially jumping into this when you don't want to. I think it's important people listen to this and do, but I understand why people won't want to. We're going to talk Brianna Ghey. And everything that's around that. So I will say now, if you don't want to listen to this, thank you for listening. It's always a pleasure. And come back next week. Those that are still around, and just to give a brief synopsis of what's happened. Young teenage girl, 16-year-old Brianna Ghey from Warrington, was murdered last weekend. In a park, her body was discovered, which is tragic in and of itself. And it turned out that she was a young trans girl. And there's two 15-year-olds, I believe they are, that have now been charged with her murder. Originally arrested on suspicion, now charged with her murder. And it's tragic all round. And if that was it, that it was just a young 16-year-old girl that was murdered, that's tragic and it's horrible. You just don't want to see that. But there's a lot gone around this. Before I do, is there anything you want to add to that before I go on to the buts?
No. Go ahead.
No. Right, okay. So, the reporting around this seems off to me from the very start. So, first of all, it didn't come out that she was trans. And I was almost okay with that because it meant it wasn't, for me, that felt like, okay, that's not the main thing and people maybe recognising her as a girl. Like, obviously I didn't know, like, so that wasn't my fault that, people have recognised her as a girl. But it was maybe a good thing because she was recognised as a girl, which is what she is. She's a girl. But then it came out that she was trans and the reporting changed. So the likes of the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Star, the Guardian even, the Times, all of them reported this beautiful 16-year-old girl has been murdered. She had light hair, slim body, the sort that the media will jump on. She wasn't a poor black girl who no one cared about. In the media, she was every bit the poster child of what the media like to report on when it comes to people being murdered.
Yes.
Not her fault, no one's fault, apart from the media and the way they report. Anyway, I then found out on the Monday morning, I think it was, that she was trans, and I was like, oh no, poor, this is like so sad. My first thought was, I really hope this is just a random attack. Not like, okay, this is why I hate my words. I don't hope it was anything that got her murdered. I hope she was still alive, and that nothing like this ever happened. But my hope was, it was because she has been murdered, it was a random attack, and that was it. But the reporting came out, they arrested two 15-year-olds. And there's no evidence of it being a hate crime. Now, I get they don't know it's a hate crime. But you don't often see reporting that early from the police or from the media going, oh, there's no evidence it's a hate crime for most other murders. Don't get me wrong. If someone's gone in and started attacking people at a gay pride event, that's a hate crime. We know that's a hate crime because the circumstances around it suggest that's a hate crime. But most murders that happen, it's never reported, it's not a hate crime. Because you can't know that. Any woman that's murdered, that could be an incel committing a hate crime. And it doesn't get reported as that. So what struck me early was the very first, the police coming out going, no evidence of a hate crime, none at all. And the media going, there's no, it's not a hate crime. Police have stated it's not a hate crime. Well, no, the police haven't stated it's not a hate crime. The police have said there's no evidence of it being a hate crime, which is very, very different to it not being a hate crime. And yeah, just the whole reporting seemed to lead with, it's not a hate crime. It's not a hate crime. And then you got the Daily Mail, for fuck's sake, actually actively sending out investigative reporters to find out Brianna Ghey's dead name. It's just like, no, don't do that. Just don't. Show us some respect. And the reporting quickly changed on trans teenager, trans girl, blah, 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 or everything, trying to point out that all of a sudden she's not this beautiful 16-year-old girl who's been murdered. It's like really went from, we won't mention trans at all, to, okay, now we're going to have to really point that out. But it's not a hate crime. It's not a hate crime. And the rallying around from the community has been amazing. The money donated to her funeral fund is just, it shows, if you ever want evidence that there's a divide between the media and the old white men and what the world is really like, check out her fundraiser. Someone set up a fundraiser to raise $4,500 for her funeral to take the pressure off her parents, and I believe it's well over £100,000 now has gone into that.
That's fantastic.
And what they do with that, the parents, whether it's a memorial, whether they give it to mermaids or a local trans charity or hospital or anything, is absolutely brilliant. But it shows there is a massive divide between what's reported and what's actually going on in the world. Yeah. The likes of... right, I'm kind of going off on two different chains here. So first of all, the media. Bizarrely, the most reasoned reporting of it that I've understood, and I've not read it because I refuse to read it, but that have actually spoken to people who know her, it's the Sun. And like, that can't be right.
Weird.
Yeah, right. But don't quote me on that because I've not read anything in it. I will refuse to read anything to do with the Sun for obvious reasons. But whenever I've seen reports on like the BBC or other news places or that's been linked, it's like people in the area, so and so spoke, like reported to the Sun. Now I don't know if they've actually spoke to someone from the Sun or whether they've said something and the Sun have picked it up and do that thing they do with like football stories where there's a press conference and they do the we found this out, and it's generally just like a general conversation. I don't know, but they're the ones who picked up that she was being bullied at school for being trans, like systematic bullying throughout the for the last few years. Whereas others weren't picking up on that. The others were still going, it's not a hate crime. Now, they've been charged, and the police have had to come out and say, we've actually investigated that this could have been a hate crime. You don't say.
Yeah.
I've seen some people trying to go, she talks pro about drugs and stuff like that. It might have been a drugs deal or something like that gone wrong. It was like, Jesus Christ. They're already trying to people are already trying to find way to sort of like belittle her or make her look like she's in the wrong. It reminds me of, and it seemed to be nipped in the bud, which was good. But do you know, whenever you hear sort of like a black person's been killed or shot by the police or they was stabbed to death or something like that, you always get they must have been doing something.
Yeah.
Why? Why is the murder of this person, who just so happens to be a white upper-class person, that's terrible and tragic and everything like that? Young black kid gets murdered. Well, that's probably doing something. That is probably involved in some way. I can't put my finger on what that could be. But they started to do that with Brianna Ghey, and that luckily seems to have been nipped in the bud pretty damn quickly. But anyway, it's honestly it's tragic, and it's affected me in ways where I'm becoming a lot more. I decided on the back of this I'm going to be more open. I'm scared, and that's why I've never had the full discussion with myself of who am I, how do I want to present, am I a woman, and am I in the wrong body? Because I'm too scared to do so for myself. That God knows what had happened to me. Like, on the worst side of it, like, could I be another Brianna Ghey? Obviously not. I don't mean like a 16-year-old girl. Those days are long gone. But, you know, could that happen to me? I don't like the way I look generally, for want of a better word, and I don't want anyone to say otherwise. In my mind, I'm an ugly piece of shit who's not attractive at all. So I don't feel I could present well as a woman at all. So I couldn't do that. I couldn't deal with the potential abuse, the discussions, or you look like a man in drag, or any of that. I can't put up with that. It's why I have so much respect for Stephanie Sterling, because they were not a traditionally pretty person. Are we allowed to say that? Would that make sense with when they were Jim?
I'd say about meeting particular beauty standards.
Which
are not necessarily anything but bullshit anyway. But beauty standards.
And to put themselves out there, I thought was so brave. They've taken a step I never could, but I can't do that. And it is something I've wrestled with. I've never been able to live my true self. And I'm now content with that fact that I will never live my true self. But this is my legacy that I want to create. Is I'm going to be open about that. I'm non-binary. I do present as male. But that's through comfort and wanting to hide myself. I have a beard. I wear male clothes because that's a comfort thing. And it means people don't question me. And that will never change with me. But what I want to leave is a world where, not necessarily my kids, because I don't want them to be something that I want them to be. I want to be what they want to be. And if they are both cis white versions of themselves, that's who they are. I'm not trying to create a world where everyone has to be something. It's just whatever you want to be. But I want to create a world where a future generation can, when they feel they know who they are, can be that version of themselves without fear of ridicule at the lesser level to what's happened to Brianna Ghey and being possibly murdered for being themselves. I don't want to see a world. I want to make sure that I'm not contributing to a world where that happens, where the worst cases can happen. I want to create something or be part of history that creates a world where future generations can be who they want to be in the way they want to be. This world, I want to create a world where people can be who they want to be. And the fact that this has happened around the time of that fucking game is just... The silence is deafening as well from the likes who are speaking up so loudly about a trans woman going into prison. So loud about that. The silence is deafening.
Yes.
And I just don't know. I've not got a point as such. It's just... I don't know, Stu. It's disgusting.
It is. It's really hurtful. And, you know, we've always classed ourselves as allies. We're not jumping on the Wizard game or Rowling particularly. We've always talked about our trans allyship, and I agree with everything that you said. You know, the only thing I want to add is about the Sun. Is that I'm not that surprised that the Sun have done that, because they've always been very maudlin about children. Like, the Daily Mail hasn't. Like, the Daily Mail will go after anybody who's not on the right. But the Sun know that their audience are very, you know, sentimental about kids. And so it's a stop clock being right once a day or twice a day kind of situation with them. I think they've just, because it's a child, they've always been very sentimental about children. So yeah, I think that's why they look less worse than they probably normally would in this situation.
Don't buy or read the Sun still.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I think that the amount of money that's been raised is fabulous. I think that's because, again, people understand the pain of losing a child, and even if they don't understand it, they can empathise with it properly. And I think that it's completely overblown in the media how anti-trans people are. You know, I think the vast proportion of people don't care, or they are positive towards trans people, and the rest are just like live and let live. And then there's like 15%, 20% of people who are transphobic, who are actively transphobic, but because they're the loudest and because they've got supporters in the media who really need their other, you know, the other, there always has to be an other that you can point at as being the problem. They get the loudest voice, they get the most airtime, and it's misrepresentative of the general populace. And I agree with you that people are generally very kind, very caring, and no matter how you present or how you feel yourself, they generally don't really care, and they just care about you as a person. So although this is a horrible situation, I think there is more hope in it than is necessarily presented on the surface.
Yeah, I'm not going to drag on. Just hopefully this. I mean, it's not going to have a happy ending, but hopefully this gets some clarity to it. This whole thing, and at the end of the day, just another child has lost their life, and that's sad. And I still hope that the reason they lost their lives wasn't just because of who they decided to be. I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, but all good points, and I agree. And it is an absolute tragedy, and I would obviously like to take a moment to remember all the children who are attacked or hurt or killed in a similar situation or in a different situation just because of who they are, but are not reported on because, like you mentioned, that they're not white, that they are non-white. And I think it happens an awful lot. I think it is completely underreported, and that shouldn't be. Everybody should be given the same level of respect and notification on that, so that the people involved can be helped by us as a society. Not really much to add to that other than it's a very difficult topic, so hopefully it's not impacted you too much listening today. Please tune into our Discord if you'd like to discuss this or any other topics, and in the meantime, until next week, stay safe and stay sane.